Hello and welcome to WTO Forum. Today's topic, what is at stake for the private sector in the Doha Round negotiations? Commentators and analysts have devoted a great deal of time and space to the question of the merits and the minuses of the Doha negotiations, but what does it mean for those who really trade? The entrepreneurs, the businesses around the world who trade, who engage in international commerce across borders. We're very fortunate to have with us today two experts on this topic. Jacqueline Coté, the Geneva representative for the International Chamber of Commerce, and Rajesh Aggarwal, an international trading system specialist with the International Trade Center. Welcome to you both. Jacqueline, your thoughts?
Thank you. Well, a few basic thoughts. There is no trade if there's no private sector, and hence the private sector is a very important stakeholder. But equally, the private sector is part of society, and if society benefits from a successful Doha round, then the private sector benefits as well. And then by benefiting, it brings these benefits back to the economy. So what's at stake? Of course, there are many studies from the OECD, by the World Bank, by the WTO itself, on the numbers, what would be brought into the economy if this round is successful. And you can question the numbers, but they're all quite substantial. And that, of course, boosts the private sector directly. But beyond that, I think for the private sector, with a successful round, I think it would increase the business confidence in this institution and in the fact that governments actually want to get a deal off the ground. I think it would obviously be a boost to world economy, and particularly now in a time of crisis. And it's not just the financial crisis, which we see every day in the newspaper. It's the food crisis, which was yesterday's story, but is still very much part of us. It's soaring energy prices. It's climate change, which was a topic that was addressed yesterday. And less perhaps in the media, but very much there, the water crisis as well. So this would actually help our economy tremendously. And then I'd like to mention that for the private sector, this has the Doha round, or a successful Doha round, has a very important symbolic dimension. And it would bode well for the international efforts to tackle the crisis. And finally, I think it would tell us that actually governments can work together and come to a successful deal together, and that in the light of the negotiations on climate change, I think that would give us confidence that we will see both deals come off.
Rajesh.
I think I'll approach this subject from the perspective of small and medium enterprises from developing countries. I think they are looking for more market access, be it agriculture or manufactured goods. They are looking for fair competition in third country markets. They are also at the same time aware of the new challenges that will be thrown by the open trading system. And one thing which they keep saying is the ever-increasing non-tariff barriers, which are repeatedly mentioned by them as major business challenge now. And to some extent, they are concerned that this issue is hardly being addressed in the Doha round. Now, whether they are adequately represented or not, it varies from country to country. Now, it varies, say, with country's economy, with how open it is, whether the political culture is conducive to private sector participation, and what is the technical preparedness of the private sector to participate alongside their governments in the negotiating process. The good thing is that 3 years ago, we used to hear that the governments don't want to listen to them in some countries. Now, this is no longer heard, although their hopes may not have been met, that they are not taken on board to the extent they would have desired. Now, again, whether their concerns are echoed by the governments or not, I think, again, it depends, one, on the organizational strength of the private sector. The more organized and more inclusive of the interests that they represent they are, the better they are heard by their governments, and their concerns are echoed at the negotiating fora. Good understanding and articulation of the issues under negotiations is another factor which helps private sector to voice their concerns and be heard by their governments. Third, I think the last point is that the ability to compromise with others and be realistic about the possible outcomes is a very important factor which increases the credibility of the private sector with their governments.
Jacqueline, Rajesh mentioned the point about non-tariff barriers and the fact that the negotiations are not directly addressing them. Are your members concerned about this as well?
Yes, it's obviously an important point in the negotiations. And to bring back the point about are they present or not, because we hear, and we heard in this public forum, you know, where are you guys? You know, is the private sector present in these negotiations? Of course, we can't be present with the governments here in the WTO. And our intervention is definitely at the government level, as you mentioned. And you know, the more organized we are, the more organized we are to get the message across to the governments. It's, you know, undeniable that after 7 years there is some sort of fatigue. And I think there's fatigue on the part of everybody, including the WTO Secretariat. And the negotiations are becoming more and more complex, of course, and detailed. And it's hard for many businesses to actually understand what that means for them. So if there's an easy way through a preferential trade agreement, they may want to go that route rather than sit back and wait for a multilateral agreement to come to be completed. Of course, the world has changed tremendously since the round was launched, and I think for some business, they're wondering, is it keeping up with the changing reality? And that was actually the topic of our panel yesterday. You know, there are issues that are simply not covered and that are very important. But I think by and large, the private sector is there, maybe not as visible as, you know, some NGOs are, but they're definitely behind the scenes and you know, fighting for you know, what they feel are important stakes to them.
I think the private sector in the developing countries, they are utilizing this time to really, you know, trying to cope with the challenges that they expect or anticipate from the conclusion of the Doha Round in being, you know, more open competition and more open markets. So they know that it is not going to be business as usual. So they are trying their best to increase their productivity, to source raw materials at cheaper cost, more efficient ways of logistics management, etc. And they always keep on making this point that they need to be assisted to build the supply side constraints to really to be able to take advantage of the new market openings. So in a way, what I'm saying is that they are really fruitfully utilizing the time and waiting for Doha Round to conclude in trying to build their supply side capacities to take opportunities of the new market access openings.
Of course, the private sector has a tremendous ability to adapt. And when you have a rules-based system, so you know what the rules are, and then you try to adjust how you are actually doing business so that you can comply with the rules, but actually get some advantage. So I don't think we're just waiting. I think we're adapting, but we're also, you know, screaming for trade facilitation, you know, simplified procedures, and so on. And you know, some of us think, well, why can't we have, for example, a trade facilitation agreement, you know, up and running, and let's, you know, the other things stay behind and take another 2 years, but at least we have that ability to then work under a simplified system.
Rajesh, your final thoughts.
I think I would say that the small and medium enterprises in developing countries are usually in favor of a multilateral trading system. So they have a lot of stake in the Doha Round. I don't mean to say that they don't engage in the bilaterals and regionals, but they see it from the perspective, or they approach it from the perspective that it will lead ultimately to a robust multilateral trading system. It will give them time to adjust before they're ready for taking commitments at the multilateral level. And also, they have told us point blank that they actually get fed up if too many regional and bilateral agreements are in place, because they have to then conform to multiple rules of origin regimes, and ultimately they prefer to trade via the MFN route.
Jacqueline? Yeah, so I think by and large I would espouse everything that Rajesh has been saying. We're certainly the International Chamber of Commerce, which represents your constituency, the smaller enterprises, but also the multinationals in 130 countries, are very much supportive of the multilateral trading system. And, you know, we are really backing the WTO. It's the best we have, and it has to work. And we're really hoping that this round can, you know, now get off the ground, and then maybe there are certain adjustments that needs to be made to the system. But it's the only way to go for some of the reasons that you mentioned. So,
Jacqueline Coté, Rajesh Aggarwal, many thanks to you both. And thanks to you for watching WTO Forum.